Hello everyone, so in today's video I want to take our previously created character, which was the high resolution model we made in ZBrush, and as you remember it has millions of points, it's really dense, and we just brought it into Maya for beautiful rendering. Just use the polypaint. If you have not watched that tutorial, I strongly suggest you do in order to follow this one and for this one to make sense. So in this one I just wanted to take the character that we made in ZBrush and create a low poly, clean topology, game ready model that is also going to work with proper textures and Substance Painter and all of that. So let's see what is the process of taking the model from ZBrush and bringing it into Substance Painter. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm gonna put on my glasses and get started. Alright, so in our last video, this is where we ended. So right now we have all these different subtools, right? And different subtools have different poly paint in them, and some of them even have the surface detail that we did in our last video. And all of that is baked into the mesh, right? So one of the first things we need to understand is for us to create beautiful textures, we need two things, right? We need low topology model, and for baking and Substance Painter we also know that we need the high resolution model with all this detail. Next thing you want to do is you want to save your high res as an OBJ file or FBX, it doesn't really matter, but in this case let's create a high poly version that we can use, right? And I'm just going to merge everything as one tool, so I'm going to say merge visible. When I press merge visible, you can see that a new tool was created called merged. So I can click on it, and now I can go between the one with the multiple layers, right? Or I can go to the merge one, which is just one solid one. It doesn't look like anything is happening here, but the layers are different, right? If I wanted to, I can even rename this and say, you know, maybe high res version. So I'm going to call it high res, that's fine. Another thing I know is that the poly paint is not really important on this high res. We're just going to be using it for baking only, right? So let's say we are happy with it. The only other thing you want to pay attention to, obviously, is the total number of points. So if you have a super fast computer, maybe 2.6 million for high res is not a big deal. But if your computer is a little bit, you know, maybe not the fastest one on the planet, you could optimize this without losing any detail. And if I turn on my polyframe, I can currently see what the high-res model looks like. But what I could also do is I can come to my Z plugin, go to my decimation master, and then what I could do is I can say pre-process current. So I'm going to click on this button here. Okay, so once it finishes, by default, the decimation master is currently set to 20% of decimation. You can see that right here. When I press decimate the current, I want you to pay attention to two things when you're doing this. One, I want you to take pay close attention to the quality of your model, and you can see what the textures look like or what the smoothness looks like. And then the second thing you want to pay attention to is the total active points, right? So as soon as I press decimate, after we did pre-process, if I say decimate, you can see what's going to happen. The number just dropped to 523,000 instead of, you know, over 2 million. That's a big difference, right? So the model got a lot lighter. But at the same time, if you look really close, you could see that nothing has changed visually. Visually, it looks exactly the same, so it didn't lose any of that beautiful detail that is being sculpted in, or that was sculpted in. And for that reason, we are happy with this because that would make a better high poly version for bakings, right? So if I turn on my polyframe, I can see what ZBrush did. So essentially just kind of triangulated everything, and it did it in such a way that it retained all the detail, which is amazing, right? That's exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and export this out as our high poly version. I'm gonna call it high-res.fbx, or if you wanted to, you can even switch it to OBJ. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna leave it as FBX and just say save. All right, very well. So now what we need to do is we need to create the low poly version of this character. And to do this, we're definitely going to need the layers. So I'm going to go back into the layers, and let's treat each layer as its own element, and one by one, let's just optimize it, right? So I'm going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to hold on the Shift key and turn off all the poly paint. I'm also going to hold on the Shift key and turn off all the eyeballs. And let's just literally layer by layer go through this, right? So we'll start from the rocks. I'm going to start from the bottom up. So let's talk about the rocks. I'm going to press on the rocks layer. I'm going to press F on my keyboard to zoom in. And you just have to turn on your kind of analytical mind and think about this. So I'm going to turn on my polyframe. I can see that this is very dense, right? 1 million, I guess. That's a lot. We'll go to geometry, and we need to make sure to take a look at our subdivision levels and see what's going on here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do auto groups. I'm going to do Control Shift and click. And let's go ahead and just look at this one alone by itself and see what would that look like if we did 1K just for this rock by itself. Okay, so this is actually looking pretty good, and I'm kind of liking it. Now, maybe I think it's a little too high, right? How do I dial this down? Well, I could do the same thing, Control Shift and click to isolate it. And let's just do half and do ZRemesh. And in my opinion, this is much better. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. So let's go ahead and just do this one. And let's go ahead and do the same thing. Set it to 1K. And honestly, if we know that half of it looked better, maybe we could do 0.5 and just do a ZRemesh. And it should look something really similar to the other rock, right? Okay, and it does, right? Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the next one. And I'll fast forward to this, but ideally, the whole idea here is that you assign different groups by using the auto group button. And if you're not sure what that is, that's going to be under Tools, Poly Groups, and there's a button called Auto Groups. So the power of auto groups is that then you have full control over individual mesh, even though they are in one layer, right? So that's really important to understand. So I'm going to fast forward, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control Shift on each one and just do the same thing. I'm just going to ZRemesh each rock at 0.5. And if you wanted lower, just do half and find a number that works for you. But 0.5 seems like a good number to shoot for. All right, so once you finish, you should have something similar to what I'm looking at, right? And you can see that our total poly count or point count went to 3,000 versus 1 million. So that's quite a difference. And this would be pretty great for like a low poly version. Now, this is definitely could be optimized, I would say, by as much as 80%. But my intention is not to create a perfect low poly asset, but just instead take you through the process of what the steps are, and then you could dial this in, even manually. I would just say maybe even using something like ZModeler is a great idea, right? You can manually optimize this by just even deleting edges. So if I click on this, I can say delete. I can do edge loop complete, and I can just manually click on these edges just like that and optimize my geometry even more manually, right? So that would be the process for that. So again, take your time and just make sure that your meshes look nice and you are happy with the total count, right? All right, so I am going to move on to the next layer. So the next layer is going to be the leaves. I'm going to press F. Let's do auto groups. Make sure each leaf has its own auto group. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of zero in on each one and just ZRemesh it individually, right? So let's start with this red one. I'm going to go to geometry, ZRemesher, and I'm going to switch this to 1. I'm going to leave adaptive in because this is a little more complex and it has some interesting bends and curves. So I'm going to leave adaptive on, and let's do ZRemesh. Press it on my end. I'm actually getting an error. It says I'm remeshing error. So let's go ahead and bring back our other meshes by clicking Control Shift, and let's go ahead and do check mesh integrity. And it says this mesh contains 12 faces with multiple references to the same vertex, right? Let's go ahead and click on Fix Mesh. And once we've done that, we can check on this, click on this once again to make sure that it passes the test, and it does. So now we know ZBrush fixed any strange issues that ZRemesher might encounter. So let's go back to the ZRemesher and try this again. Control Shift to hide everybody else, and I just want to focus on one leaf at a time, just like we did with the rocks. Again, I'm going to leave it at 1K, and I'm going to do adaptive, and let's do ZRemesher. All right, very cool. So I'm getting something like this. If that works, you can leave it. A couple things you can explore to see if maybe you can make it better is do Control Shift to maybe let's see if we can turn off adapt. Now adapt is going to be these are the edges that you see along the sides that are multiple edges, and they're just being used to hold the shape together, right? So I'm going to do half, and let's do ZRemesh. And maybe that's a little bit better. I'm actually liking this a little more. And I'm going to do the same thing with the next one. So Control Shift. Let's go ahead and let's do the same thing. I'm going to first leave adapt on, set this to 1, do ZRemesh, just like we did before. All right, and then same thing, Control Shift and click to select it one more time. Turn adapt off, do half, and ZRemesh. And I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for all the other leaves, but I'm gonna fast forward since these are all exactly the same. All right, fantastic. So once you finish, you should see something kind of similar to mine. So I got mine down to 5,700 points, and I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and turn on the rocks and the leaves. So both of these have been done and optimized. Okay, let's go ahead and move up the list. So the next one up the list is going to be our stem. For the stem, I'm going to turn off Dynamesh and go to geometry, and let's take a look. We don't have any subdivision levels. The next thing I would like to do is let's do Control W or Command W. On the Mac, it's not Control, it's actually Command. But anyway, so that's going to give you, I think on the PC it's Control W, but it's going to give you your own polygroup, right? It's going to put it in one polygroup. And from there, and then of course, if you didn't want to press a button, you could always use other groups. So that's there as well. Multiple uses for this amazing button. So anyway, so once you have that, right, let's go ahead and decide what do we want to do as far as the ZRemeshing go. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to switch it to 1. I'm going to leave adaptive on initially, and I'm just going to say ZRemesh, and let's take a look. So it's going to go from 107,000. Let's see where we can take it down to. That still looks decent. All right, so that's actually looking really nice. I'm pretty happy with that. Before you commit, just for the sake of exploration, strongly suggest to always push it one more, even if it breaks, and then just undoing it. So what I mean is, let's leave the adaptive on to half. And right now we're 2,500, or almost 2,600. But if I do ZRemesh, I can see what the next one down looks like, and I'm still happy with this. And ironically, this actually went up, but it does still looks really nice. If you want to get this number down, turn off adapt and then do ZRemesh, and you can see the distribution is going to change dramatically, and now it's down to 1,300. So you can just keep going and figure out, you know, how low of the a low poly model do you need for your game, right, or your asset. So In my case, because I know we're going to be baking over the high res, I think something like this should be pretty much perfect. Yes, it could be further optimized, honestly. You know, I could bring into Maya and optimize it even more, but 1300 points for this, you know, stem, I think is totally going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it alone, and let's keep going. So the next one up the list is going to be this, I guess this neck piece. Now the neck piece is interesting because we know that the inside of this is going to be inside. So technically, you know, you could delete all of these faces, but let's just leave them alone. And let's do a ZRemesh because we can probably get this super low. So I'm going to go to geometry. I'm going to switch this to, let's do something really low, like 0.5. I'm going to turn the adapt off. This is not an important piece at all. And let me just do a ZRemesh. All right, I'm going to do half. And let's go ahead and do half again. All right, and honestly, I think this is great. So only 131 points, very low, not important. In the back of your head, barely see it. That's great. All right, awesome. Let's go to the next one. That's going to be our head. And one thing I do want to point out as you're doing these would be great practice to save your work. So make sure you save your tool. So I'm going to go to Save As, and I have one going called Low, so I could say Save and Replace. I like replacing it, so then I like to see that it's being replaced. Obviously, you could just say Save, and that's going to overwrite the other one, right? So do as you wish, but the next one up the list is going to be this head. Now for the head, let's take advantage of some of these poly groups that we got going on. And if I go into geometry, I remember that I do have subdivision levels on these, so I could just dial these down and delete higher, because we are, you know, trying to optimize this, right? So the next thing we could do is let's go back to ZRemesher, and in here let's say keep groups, detect edges, and we don't need poly paint, but I'm going to leave everything as is, and let's just see what happens if we ZRemesh it. Right now it's 6,000 points, and that's a little bit too high for us. So now we got to 2,900. I think that's a little bit better. Let's see if we can get it a little bit lower. I think this is what I was looking for, 1,700. This seems like a very nice, clean, low poly frame. So I'm gonna stop here. I like this. You can keep going, of course, if you wish. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at our teeth. So the teeth are, there's so many of them, and we probably don't want to do them all at once. So just like what we did with the rock, same thing, right? Let's go ahead and make sure we do auto group, and I strongly suggest doing this one at a time. So I'm going to do Control Shift and click, and let's just see what kind of results we get. So I'm going to go to ZRemesher, and let's just take a look and figure out what can we do here. I'm going to leave Adapt on at first. I'm going to switch this to really low. I need this tooth to be super low. So I'm going to go to 0.2, and I'm going to do ZRemesh. Okay, and honestly, this is looking really nice. I'm going to Control Shift and select it one more time, and let's take a look and see what happens if we do half. And yes, that is perfect. Now I'm going to do the same thing for all the other ones. So maybe let's do one more together, and then the rest I'm going to fast forward. So again, Control Shift and click. I'm going to switch this to Adapt, turn this off, and I want this to be at 0.2, and ZRemesh. Amazing. Let's do Control Shift, Adapt off, half, ZRemesh. All right, now you can see that they are about the same. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the rest of these, and also the top ones as well. So all of those, the top ones, and then we'll do the eyeballs together. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward. All right, amazing. So next, let's go ahead and go to our eyeballs. So I can turn both of them on and take a look. So the eyeballs, as you remember, also have a separate polygroup for the pupil, and then we have the eyelids, right? So let's do each one individually. Again, Control Shift and click on the specific polygroup. Let's go to ZRemesher and Geometry, and we know that we need this to be super low. So let's do 0.5. I'm going to turn adaptive off because it's pretty much around sphere, and just do a ZRemesh. I think that is pretty low. Let's do Control Shift and take a look. If we think it's good, then we can leave it alone. If not, let's do half and do a ZRemesh and see what maybe if we like that even better. And I think I do. I think that totally works. Let's go with that. Let's do this one next. Same thing. I'm gonna leave adapt off. I'm gonna switch this to, let's do 0.5 as well. Just kind of gradually start dialing it down and do, let's go ahead and do ZRemesh. Nice. And then we can do, let's do half. Okay, and I'm loving this. This is pretty great. We can do auto groups a couple times if we want to decide what color we want. Doesn't really matter. Just playing at this point. Let's do Control F and do the same thing for the next one. Next, let's go ahead and go to our other eyeball. Control Shift, Geometry, turn off adaptive, put this to 0.5, ZRemesh, Control Shift, half, ZRemesh. Beautiful. Do the same thing, Control Shift, click on the eyelid. Let's do again 0.5. Control Shift, let's do half and ZRemesh. All right, and there you go. So that we just did the entire character, right? And now what we need to do is, let's take a look, and you can see this is the low poly version. Now for new 3D artists that might say, well, this is strange, everything looks very gritty and kind of boxy. In ZBrush, there's no such thing as smooth preview. So for example, in Maya, you can do hard edges and soft edges. In ZBrush, that doesn't really have that, because this program is more made for like sculpting with like high resolution sculpt. So it doesn't really have a preview for low, not yet at least, for like a low resolution meshes that could be previewed as smooth meshes. So we could see, for example, what would the automated UVs give us using the Z plugin and using the UV Master, right? It's just for the sake of experimentation, let's try to do that. So I'm gonna let's go ahead and merge this, merge visible, and come up here. A new tool was created, and let's go ahead and rename this, and maybe let's call this low res. Okay, and now low res. Now keep in mind, this is amazing. Check this out. So our high res, if you remember, was 6.5 million points, right? So the low one that we just did by optimizing each subtool or each layer of the tool, right? Each subtool individually, we got it down to 15,000 points. That's pretty amazing if you think about it. This is pure magic, all automated without manually doing anything. You know, this was generated for us. So that's a very powerful feature of ZBrush that is great, right? So let's go ahead and do this. Let's do auto groups. So we know each single element or single separate mesh is going to have its own poly group. Then let's head over to our UV master. I'm going to turn off symmetry because this is not symmetrical, right? And let's go ahead and do unwrap. And then we can do flatten, and we can see what the automatic UVs look like. And I gotta be completely honest with you, this is looking pretty solid. I think that this might actually work. So if this was a model that is being used for, if you want to sell this, maybe you wouldn't want to do automatic UVs. You want to bring it into something like Maya or 3D Code or Blender or some other program and just one by one beautifully unwrap each element so you have full control. But sometimes the automatic ones really do a pretty decent job. So we could see what this looks like, and maybe we could just bypass the entire UVs process and just see if we like this. Now we can also do check seams to see where the seams are, and you can see they're usually in ZBrush, unless you kind of guide it, it's going to randomly put it in different places. Like, you definitely probably don't want a seam on the head of the character. But if you're just learning and practicing and just trying to see how your model might, be looking like in Substance Painter or Game Engine, you're just experimenting, then this is totally fine. Like, this is good enough. And another thing you could do to guide it is you could use polypaint to guide the seams. So technically you could, for example, color the mouth and then tell ZBrush to use polypaint as the guides. But I don't really want to get into all of that because I think this is going to be, I don't want this to be another super long video. Let's just go with this. I'm going to take the UVs that ZBrush automatically gave us, and let's go ahead and export this out as an FBX into Substance Painter. So I'm going to go ahead and do, the other one was called high res, so maybe this one is going to be called low, just so we know the difference. I'm going to say save. I'm going to say OK. And let's go ahead and jump into Substance Painter. I'm going to do File, New. Let's set our textures to 2K, and I'm going to say Select. And let's go ahead and find our low resolution first and bring that in. Definitely going to leave this off because we are using the ZBrush one. You are welcome to see how Substance Painter might auto unwrap it. Maybe you're happy, maybe you might be happy with that, but I'm going to leave this off and just use the one that we got from ZBrush for our UVs. And I'm just going to leave this on this default template and just say OK. Alright, so this is the low version of our model. One thing that I personally like to do right away when I bring a model in is I do like to come to here, and I like to turn the shadows on, but I do them kind of soft. Maybe let's do something like 15. So they're kind of on, but they're not really, because this is going to be a PBR asset. So it is important for us to know how it might interact with shadows and lights in the game engine, right? Assuming the game engine is going to have shadows turned on. And another thing that I like to do personally is I do like to turn anti-alias on, and this is on already, which is great. All right, you can also check your HDR image. Maybe you want to change it or pick a different lighting, so you could do that real quick. And once you're done, hold down the Shift key, right click to drag. You can see what that looks like. Nice shadows running through. And the first thing we should do is let's go ahead and bake our character. So let's bake our low and high res models together. So I'm going to go to Bake Mesh. And in here, I'm going to set this to 2K. I'm going to say, I'm going to click on this little file icon to find my high res model and say open. Once it comes in, we can spin around and see if we see any red paint. If you do see some red paint, like there's a little bit right there, you can adjust your cages and that will get rid of, you definitely want to get rid of any red. So for example, I can expand it a little bit, and you can see how that's, if you have something like this, right, you definitely want to dial this up because you want to make sure that the low cage is expanding over the high to include the detail. I hope that makes sense. I'm gonna leave this little piece alone. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. I'm not really seeing any other issues. Just a little bit here on the tooth, but I think I'm pretty happy with just this by default. That's fine. All right, so another thing that we can do is we can crank this up. If you have a fast computer, you know, go to 16. I'm gonna go to 4. I don't need to be crazy. I want to be nice and speedy. And let's go ahead and bake. All right, once it finishes, I'm gonna say return to painting mode and take a look. And check this out. So all the detail that we had, look at the subtle detail on the leaf and the subtle detail on the stem. All of that surface detail was brought in, and look at these beautiful round things that we added to the face. It's all baked onto the low resolution cage. And just for new 3D artists that don't really appreciate how cool this is, if you turn on your mesh wire, and let's just change this to something like black, and you can crank this up a little bit, but you can see that the resolution of the model is very, very low, and all of this awesome detail is just being brought by the baking or the normal map or the height map, but it's not part of the wireframe, right? So this is absolutely amazing. Watch Substance Painter and ZBrush kind of work together and bring these models to life by just using these cool tricks, right? So again, because we separated all the elements, we don't really have much cleanup, or we don't have any issues or black spots or anything because the mesh is clean. We separated our meshes. We did a nice job preparing for this. And if you do that and you do it correctly, then your bake should be very clean and beautiful, right? And here in Substance Painter, this is not going to be a long, fancy texture tutorial, but let's just throw some, just some simple maps on here, some simple textures on here that we can preview our character, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and close this, and let's just do something simple. I'm gonna create a new layer for the rocks, and we could throw maybe this on and see what that looks like, see if we like something like that. I think I do. This is an asteroid surface material that you can just grab right from, you can jump into the Adobe Substance assets, which is part of the Substance Painter subscription. And let's just type in asteroid. And there's going to be, so here it is, but there's going to be millions of amazing textures you can use. So let's just type in rocks, and you can use any one of these to just drag right onto your work, right? So I'm going to go back. Again, I don't really want this to turn into a fancy texture tutorial, but let's say I like this one, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and do a black mask. I'll grab this tool here, grab my mesh, and I'm just going to click on each rock and tell Substance Painter, hey, the rock texture should only appear on these elements down there and don't affect the plant, right? So that's great. Another thing we can do is we can click on this and we can see the normal map is turned off. I can turn that on and you can see the difference, right? We can also, of course, change the tiling, if we want a little more detail. And we can also change the projection. Maybe we like that better. So it's an infinite options here, right? So do as you please. So once you are happy with your rocks, let's go ahead and add something to our plant. So for the plant, let's come down to our bottom fill layer, and let's just select a green color that we like for our plant. Maybe something like this. Okay, that's great. Let's do our teeth to be kind of yellow, so I'm going to add another one. I'm going to do, let's go ahead and select kind of a yellowish teeth like we did in with our poly paint. So maybe something like this. I'm going to right click, do black mask. Let's go ahead and use this tool again, polygon fill, and just select our teeth really quick. And I can drag and select multiple if I wanted to. All right, very nice. Let's go ahead and see what else can we do. So one of the things we've done in Maya is we made our eyes glow. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to add a emission channel, emissive. And in emissive, let's go ahead and call these eyes. I'm going to do Alt and click on this emission channel, and let's just decide what color we like. So maybe we'll do something like an orange glow. I'm going to right click, do black mask, select my eyes, and now let's go ahead and let's turn off our frame. We don't need to see this anymore. And another thing we can do is let's turn on the post-processing on these. So I'm going to go back in here. Activate post-processing, go to glare. I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to open glare up, and let's do bloom. Also, let's turn on our vignette as well, just for fun. Now for the post-processing to show up, we have to come here, and we have to turn up the emissive intensity. So that's pretty cool. We can also, if we wanted to, now jump back into here, and we can change this to any color we like. So you have to figure out what you like, maybe pink, red. Let's go ahead and go with, I'm gonna go with green on this one. All right, so that's pretty cool. Another thing we can do is if we switch this to base color. All right, you can currently see that there's no baked shadows or light of any kind in our color map, right? So it looks very boring. And maybe one of the things we could do is just add a little bit of an effect that will give our PBR a little bit of a, you know, a more appealing kind of a stylized hand-painted look, right? So for that, to do this, all we need to do is let's just add a fill layer, and I'm gonna hold on the Alt and click on color just to, I only want to do this with color. I'm gonna right click, and let's go to add generator, Alt and click on color again to deselect all of these. Click on generator, let's just throw some dirt on this guy. So I'm gonna say dirt, and then I'm gonna invert my dirt, so I have something like this. I'm gonna hold on the Alt and click on color again just to have the color selected. And now what I can do is I can come here and let's do something like soft light. We can also dial this down if we feel like it's a little bit too strong. But let's do this in a second. Another thing I want to do is let's go ahead and add another fill layer. And let's do the same thing. Hold on the Alt and just select the color. Right click, and let's do a filter. Alt and click to deselect everything else. Let's go ahead and add a filter, and let's add a this one right here called Baked Lighting Stylized. I'm just going to simply click on it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Sun Sky, little dial here, and I'm going to change the direction of the sun to be coming from the top. So something like that. You can of course play around, see what you like. You can also change the color of this to whatever you like. Maybe you want like a specific tint to be baked into the character. Let's just leave it the way it is. We can also come to these as well and play with the colors and direction. And again, I only want this to happen in the color channel, so I'm going to hold on Alt and click to deselect everything else. And let's come back here and let's do a soft light, right? Now you can see, even though we're in base color, we have all this beautiful information baked into our plant, right? Which looks pretty awesome. So let's do this. Let's jump back to the material version and see how it looks. And you can see I have all this amazing detail that was just added very quickly without doing much of anything. And you can, of course, you know, play around and dial this even more. One thing that I know for sure, you know, you can maybe dial the dirt down. Maybe it's a little bit too much. Let's do something like 60. We can also see the baked light right here. We can see if we like that. Maybe 100 is a little too much. We can dial this down to 60 as well. You can then hold on the Shift key and right click to kind of move this light, the PBR lights around, and see if you like what you're seeing. We can at any point adjust our base skin color, right? So we can maybe make it purple or pink. And then keep in mind too, your PBR is going to play a huge role of how these assets look. So if I go into like a forest environment, you can see what that looks like. Or if I go into something lighter, right? So that's going to be a huge factor as well. So let's go back to maybe something like this is fine. We can also adjust the roughness, right? Do we want it super shiny, or maybe not shiny at all? Or maybe the plant should be just a little bit reflective, right? Just kind of like a skin. And figure out if we want it to be a little bit metallic or not. I do like a little bit of a roughness. I think that adds a fun little detail. And if we wanted to add that red to our mouth, like we had in ZBrush, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and add a layer. I'm going to try to be below the lights. So maybe let's call these baked lights. And then this is going to be our dirt layer, or we could say skin detail maybe. Now, let's say we want to add the mouth, right? So I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to do just the color. And let's say I want it to be kind of dark red, something like that. I can right click, go to black mask. And now we know that our UVs are not going to be our UVs are not unwrapped properly for the mouth to be by itself. So we can use some of these buttons to color like the inside of the mouth. So for that, what we need to do is let's turn on our wireframe again, like we had before. And what we could do is we can just select something like the polygon fill, and manually we could just color the inside of this of the mouth to be red, right? So essentially just ignoring the whole UVs and just painting the textures manually. To help us, another thing we can do is we can turn on Symmetry, and you can see that that's going to help us, but in this case this is not symmetrical, so honestly this is not even useful. But to make this easier, what you could do is jump into the 2D view, and in here you can see this a little bit better, right? So maybe instead of being in the 2D view, I can be in 3D and 2D, and I can just kind of quickly outline the mouth, and you can see what this looks like, right? So you can even drag and select color this way, as long as you know where it ends, right? So you know that this line right here is going to be kind of your mouth. So So very quickly I can use the 3D camera and the 2D camera to kind of go between coloring and quickly figuring out where is the actual line for the mouth is, right? So maybe I just want to do the outside first, and this way when I look on this one I know where that is, right? I'll just go around really quick, just do the outline. Alright, and once I did the outline, I know that all of these need to be red. So I can just simply drag my selection tool and just very quickly paint them all at once. So a cool little trick to painting if you don't have the proper UVs laid out or set up, right? And you can see that it did a perfect job selecting what we need. So let's go ahead and jump back into the 3D view and take a look. And honestly, I don't need the wireframe anymore, so I'm going to turn that off or dial it down. All right, very cool. Another thing we could do is if you wanted to add some paint to some of these dots, you can of course do that. You can just add a paint layer and just come down here, select maybe just the color, and maybe we have to decide what color we like. Maybe we want to have it kind of an orangey as well. We could do that. We can go to brush and select maybe a soft brush and just kind of paint these on. So you can change the size of it and see if that's something you like as well. All right, once you're done, you can also do a, let's do a filter, and let's do something like a blur. We can blur this a little bit, and we can also, of course, do like a soft light, or, you know, a screen, whatever you want. You can also control the intensity of these. And honestly, I think I should do, let's go ahead and do these as well. Very quickly go around and add some kind of a hand-painted detail, right? All right, so I think that looks pretty amazing. And if we wanted to add some more highlights to the leaves, we can add another fill layer here. We can select something like a lighter green. Maybe change the size of our brush and just kind of add a little highlights. And the cool thing about highlights is you can kind of be messy at first, just even if you lay down something like this, where obviously it looks pretty terrible, right? But the cool thing about this is you can go to filter and just blur this up and do something like that, and then just kind of tone this whole layer down, right? So you can control the highlights. So you can manually paint in the highlights wherever you like them to be. Maybe you want to, let's come back here. Definitely name your layers, but you can come here and add some, you know, to the mouth, the face, or maybe the eyes. You could do that. All right, and once you're done, let's go ahead and maybe render this and see what this looks like. So one of the things, again, definitely save your project. And for quick rendering, let's jump into iRay. And in here, one of the things we can do is let's click on this button here. Then let's come up here, and instead of seeing the photograph, let's just do clear. And maybe let's do some kind of a fun color. So we could do like an orange. Or maybe a purple would work better. We can also adjust the floor. You can see right now it looks like the character's kind of floating up. So I can adjust the white position of this. I can move this a little bit higher up. If I wanted to change the environment map, I could do that as well. As you remember, maybe we can do something like this. I kind of like that. We can also change the rotation of the environment. So currently you have a little slider here in the eye ray that will allow you to kind of move this. And then if you wanted to change the quality of your render, you can do that right here. So you can change this, for example, to maybe minutes. You can change your samples and so on. So this would be the workflow or the process of taking something from ZBrush and converting it to a low poly, and then creating all the textures. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you in our next video.